Good evening. This is a call to order for the City of Canal, Winchester Planning and Zoning meeting for Monday, September 9th, 2024. In the absence of Mr. Deeds, Ms. Gooden, would you call roll, please?
Mr. Ritchie? Mr. Wildenthaler?
Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Ms. Gooden here. Ms. McDonald? Mr. Deeds? Mr. Paulsgrove?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, I move we excuse Mr. Ritchie, Mr. Dietz, and Ms. Paulgrove.
Nope, I'm here.
Ms. McDonald?
McDonald.
So that'd be Mr. Ritchie, Ms. McDonald, and Mr. Deeds.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Wildenthaler, second by Mr. Paulsgrove. Roll call?
Mr. Wildenthaler?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Gooden, yes. Mr. Paulsgrove?
Yes.
Time in is 7:01 p.m. Now I'll need the approval of our July minutes. There was no meeting in August, so we'll need approval of July minutes, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made by Mr. Paulsgrove, second by Mr. Wildenthaler. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wildenthaler?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Gooden, yes. Mr. Paulsgrove?
Yes.
Now is the time for public comment for items that are not on our agenda. So if you wish to speak to us this evening for an item that's not on the agenda, now is your time. Okay, if you'll be speaking with us this evening, if there's any chance you'll talk to the commission, would you please stand if you're able and take an oath? So again, if there's any chance you'll speak to us this evening. All right, do you swear to be truthful in the testimony you give and tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Thank you. And I will also let the public and the applicants know that per city statute, we're missing 3 commissioners tonight, so we must have 4 positive votes for a motion to carry. So in the event we vote 3-1, that motion would not pass. Okay? And I will now turn it over to staff for our first application.
For tonight's discussion, we're going to be talking about zoning map amendment 24-003 and preliminary development plan 24001. Both these applications were tabled during the July P&Z meeting, so the applicant could work on feedback from the Planning and Zoning Commission and city staff on the proposed planned unit development there at Lithopolis, Hayes, and Oregon Road. The request, again, this evening is to rezone that property to PUD and to approve a preliminary development plan in text. The unit count is 118 single-family dwellings, 326 multiple-family dwellings, and a 4.1 acre commercial outparcel. Those single-family dwellings and multiple-family have decreased by 4 to 6 units since the last time you guys have reviewed the application. The 2023 community plan notes this property as a rural preserve / settlement. The rural preserve / settlement has several different categories for kind of how is the best practice to develop on it. Based on feedback from the commission and staff, the applicant has modified their plan to more fit the Greenway model as shown on the right. This Greenway model is set up to have interconnected green space and paths that connect different areas from the plan, basically to provide more pedestrian and trail connectivity and alternative routes to automobile traffic. So that is being met with the current proposal. Kind of going over the plan text here for Miller Farms. I'll mainly focus on the updates from when you guys last reviewed it to this evening. If there's any clarification you guys want on the plan as a whole, feel free to interrupt or ask me questions at the end. But the plan has the same breakdown of 4 sub-areas. Sub-area A is the single-family connection. Sub-area B is the single-story multiple-family piece here in the middle. That includes a large public open space on the north. Sub-area C is closer to the intersection of Lithopolis and Oregon Road. That is planned for multiple-story townhomes. And then sub-area D here at the intersection of Lithopolis and Oregon Road is programmed for commercial use. When looking at the breakdown between the different sub-areas, Within the 36.2 acres of sub-area A, there's 118 single-family lots that are shown on this plan. This 118 lot is the maximum number of lots that will be developed as part of the text. So that number can decrease or stay the same, but again, same with all these numbers here. For the dwelling units, that's a maximum count. For sub-area B, they're showing a maximum of 221 units on 41.7 acres. Sub-area C, 105 units on 2.7 acres, 13.8 acres. And sub-area D is that 4.1 acre commercial out parcel that's highlighted in yellow. Taking a look at the total here, out of the 98 acres on the site, 95.8 are developable. Within that, the applicant is providing 35 acres of open space, a total of 444 dwelling units. Looking at the different sub-areas, sub-area A is still for the single-family lot development. The applicant has provided some graphics in the application to show what they intend on building in that single-family sub-area. The sub-area is noted to ask for a couple deficiencies from our residential appearance standards. One, that the garage door be permitted to be flush with the livable area of the home, to reduce the 25% requirement for a rear and side load garage, and then also to permit the driveway to be 16 feet in width. The applicant notes that these justifications are being justified by providing window glass on the garage doors, and they note that the tighter setbacks result in more common space being dedicated. It is also creating some restrictions on the driveway placements. For sub-area B, this is the single-story multi-unit rental apartments. The applicant noted that each building within this sub-area will be substantially similar, may be repeated for a single architectural style. However, certain buildings are noted to have rear-loaded designs when they have more interaction with Oregon Road and Lyle Ditch. Looking at the color rendering here, you can see that a little better with these 4 buildings that wrap the ditch here on the eastern side of the site, and then this particular building that fronts Oregon Road have a little bit different of a treatment to them. Sub-area C, the applicant has clarified, is for a maximum 2.5-story townhome with attached garages. They do note in the text that if someone wants to build a 3-story unit, then they'll have to apply for a variance for the Planning and Zoning Commission to do so. But their intent is to build something similar, have someone build something similar to what's shown on the screen here with a 2.5 unit style. The plans indicate that these units will have attached garages to them. Part of the components with this sub-area as well is to have the units that are fronting Lyle Ditch to be designed to look like rear-loaded garages, same with the ones that front public roadways. So again, the renderings the applicant noted in their plan, those are noted to be illustrative but substantially similar. So taking a look at some of the design elements like the porches, some of the entryways around the garage doors. There's another graphic that's in the plan I didn't put up on the screen, but shows some of the commitments for how those units are going to be shaped and stylized by the future development of those sub-areas. Sub-area D is indicated for commercial development. The applicant notes that this sub-area will meet the commercial development standards. Notes that there's a list of permitted uses and a list of conditional uses that someone can request by the Planning and Zoning Commission to put on the property. Access to the site is shared with sub-area C off of Lithopolis and Oregon Road. So these 2 sub-areas, C and D, will share 2 access points to the public roadways. One of the comments that was provided by the Commission during the last review. The applicant's also noting there is a maximum building height of 35 feet and 2 stories, and then they're also committing to any operator that goes on this property is zoned to be restricted for a 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. hours. So some of the neighborhood type uses are being restricted in that way. When looking at the plan, the applicant has provided a graphic for the open space that's being provided. So on the left, everything that's within color is the common/public open space as part of the development. With the open space, the applicant does show programming for some shelter houses, gazebos, benches, some features that activate some of the larger open space areas. So the applicant is committing to those improvements as part of this preliminary plan. When looking at the connectivity throughout the site, sub-areas A on the north and south side of the ditch are public roadways. The plan for the width, tree lawn width, are shown here on the right-hand side. Those are the red dashed lines. The blue lines throughout the development are private roadways to serve the multiple family sub-areas. And then the mustard yellow lines shown on the screen are the path and trail connections that will interconnect all 4 different sub-areas. One of the items that staff tries to do with any development is not to leave these pocket neighborhoods landlocked. So I've worked with the applicant to provide a future connection for both single-family sub-areas to the west, and the applicant is also showing connecting that path system to the west in the future as well to make more regional connections, along with connecting the street, sidewalk, and path network on Hayes Road, Lithopolis Road, and Oregon Road. One of the things when staff is working with the applicant's landscape architect on the revision, if you take a look at this area here within the public green space, that path has been pulled off of these roadways in order to save more of the mature trees that are on the site. One of the ideas was to move the path rather than cutting down the tree to put the path in a straight line. So some of those things have been carefully thought about by the applicant in this resubmittal. When looking at the tree removal as part of the preliminary plan, they're showing that they are removing approximately 244 trees. That approximation is based off of the preliminary plan that's subject to change, but based off of that, they're acknowledging that they would have to plant 462 trees at 2.5 inches in caliber, noting that they will meet 100% of the tree replacement schedule within our landscape code. As part of the landscaping request as well, they are noting in the text that doing the 100% tree replacement and also 1 tree for every 500 square feet of residential ground floor coverage is difficult. So they are showing here that within sub-area B, the section in the middle for the single-story multiple family units, that they're going to plant 422 trees rather than the 743 that are required by code. And then sub-area C for the townhomes, they'll plant 145 trees rather than the 255 trees that are required by code. These tree numbers, again, are in addition to the 426 above. Sub-area A for the single-family lots, they've noted that they can meet the 3 to 4 trees per lot requirement. Those sites have yard spaces that make the tree planting more achievable, while the more dense rental multiple family products have more common space that's going to be planted with some of the makeup numbers. So having the full amount, they're asking for the deviation from that. One of the things that Planning and Zoning Commission and staff had asked for the applicant to look at was some of the treatments that make this a planned development across all 4 sub-areas rather than it looking like 4 separate projects. One of the things the applicant has provided for in this update is a fencing design that will be across the frontage of public roadways, a similar column and signage detail that will identify each of the sub-areas, both visually and from a sign standpoint, from a branding perspective. Additionally, one of the things that the applicant is also committed to, and it was kind of hard to show this in a pretty picture, is the architectural commitments for all the buildings in the sub-areas. At the time of writing the staff report, the applicant was showing 6 architectural treatments within all 4 sub-areas that were going to be met. Since putting the staff report out, the applicant has updated that to be 10 items. A physical copy has been provided for you guys this evening for review to show what changes were made. I'm sure the applicant will touch on those as well. So the staff recommendations here are based off of the packet that you guys received 10 days ago. Some of the updates that have been made since then, I provided for you guys this evening. We can talk about this this evening. But what's being shown on the screen here is a little old in terms of information, so just bear that in mind. But when looking at the compatibility of adjacent land use, zoning, appropriate plans for the area, the applicant has provided information on how this update fits the rural preserve future land use model under the greenway style by clustering small lots, centralized green space, and interconnecting public green space for foot and bicycle travel. This plan promotes a development type that meets several market types for different demands of ages, income, and household sizes. A traffic study was provided for review with the preliminary development plan in regards to Lithopolis, Hayes, and Oregon Road. That review just came back to us at the end of last week. It is showing the need for some improvements for turn lanes on Hayes Road and Lithopolis Road for those access points, but no improvements were immediately identified for Oregon Road. We are working with the traffic engineer on the applicant's side to adjust their traffic study to get that fully completed before this proposal goes to City Council. The preliminary development plan, again, is requesting a number of identified deficiencies from the base zoning code. These changes are noted to create a higher quality development that will not negatively impact the public's health, safety, convenience, comfort, prosperity, and general welfare. One of the items, again, from the staff report that's a little outdated, the applicant has provided more architectural themes and features within the buildings themselves for your consideration this evening. The proposed residential and small commercial growth, both are noted in the 2023 community plan. The city has anticipated future residential growth in this area and has planned for community level goods and services. So staff is recommending, again, based off of the data that does not show the updated architectural commitments, that this plan be tabled so the applicant can provide more information on architectural compatibility and theme for the neighborhood. So again, please take a look at the update that they sent this evening and provide feedback. As referred to the preliminary development plan, staff is noting that it's consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning code. The applicant has addressed all deviations discussed and how those deviations will result in a better quality development. One of the deviations that staff had noted previously in the staff report was that the applicant was calculating gross density and not the net density of the project as indicated by our code for a requirement. So that the applicant has provided that unit here. Again, gross density is just taking a look at the total acreage of the site, dividing it by the number of units. Net density is taking out all public right-of-way, public open space requirements, and basically the land that's left over, what's the density once you start putting buildings on it. So the applicant has provided that number here as 7.04 dwelling units per acre. Again, meeting the requirement noted in our plan development zoning code. The preliminary development plan is in conformity of the 2023 community plan. Again, this is noted to be a rural preserve settlement that promotes smaller building footprints, pedestrian connectivity, and a rural residential land uses that preserve open space. The proposed setbacks and yard space for the single-family sub-areas are in line with the rural preserve future land use designation. Again, the applicant has pulled these buildings closer to the right-of-way, has created a more dense connectivity system with how the lots are structured. One of the items the applicant has changed from last review is they've increased the side yard setbacks from 5 feet to 6 feet, giving a total minimum between buildings 12 feet based off of feedback from Planning and Zoning Commission. They've also increased the lot width as well to 52 feet to take in consideration that increase in setbacks. The preliminary development plan, again, was noted to show development standards for site compatibility with some of the theme elements. Again, the applicant has provided more architectural standards for your review this evening. The preliminary development plan includes both vehicular and pedestrian connectivity, open space networks, and other connecting site elements through signage, screening, and landscaping. All these elements create good site planning design, and that the preliminary development plan, again, was updated with the architectural elements to provide integration of the sub-areas within the planned district, and that those cohesive factors the applicant has tried to address this evening for your review. So with that, staff was recommending the preliminary development plan be tabled pending the architectural compatibility within the preliminary plan. I know there's a lot to kind of go over, but if you have any questions on the updates or specific elements, you can ask me some questions. Applicant is here as well. He wants to kind of go over some of those updates they've made for you all as well himself.
Questions, comments for staff?
Andrew, if I read through all of this, and if I understand it, your biggest concern that was still hanging was the architectural characteristics and theme.
Yeah, that's correct. One of the items that, and I guess it's kind of easy to show in these pictures. Any plan district has a reason for it to be a plan district rather than just asking for deviations in our zoning code. It's to provide compensations for what makes it a better overall development. And one of the items that staff felt was missing was, what are the treatments that make this a unified development? You have basically 3 different architecture types for residential, 1 commercial. How are you supposed to blend all these together visually to make someone feel like they're a part of the Miller Farm development? Graphically, the applicant has shown, these types of single-family homes, this type of single-story multiple-family home, this type of multiple-story townhome, and then no visual graphics for commercial. But if you look at the pictures, there are some similarities between them, and that's wonderful, but there's no text committing those similarities and those items to actually be built. So that's what staff was asking for the applicant to help justify.
And the 10 points that they gave us, or that you gave us tonight, do you feel that addresses those concerns?
There are items within the 10 that I feel could be beefed up or clarified a little further. But again, this is all part of the process of how the applicant is getting to the comfort level of selling some of the sub areas to other builders. So one of the items, like for number 1, for example, masonry shall be similar in color to be determined with the final development plan. So that one's kind of left to a future application where the masonry may be white or it could be dark red or brown. Again, there's some ambiguity there because you don't know what you're getting, but they're noting with the first final development plan, they're going to determine what that is for that moment forward. So again, there's some things that could change, but I did want to get this before the commission to see what they've put forward. I did note in my staff report, however, on the gray box on page 4, a slew of different architectural treatments, verbiage that is pulled directly from both residential and commercial plan districts throughout the city. So you can kind of see what language we've permitted elsewhere versus, compare that to what the applicant has provided.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Moore, so going from the Greenway model, or going to the Greenway model, so we've improved density to be allowable within the code. Got approximately 12 feet from building to building, which has increased the lot width to, I think you said 52 feet. And then the traffic study has been done and is back for review. So on the traffic study, who is responsible for those proposed improvements? I believe you said Hayes and Lithopolis Road?
Yes, the improvements that are contemplated from the developer's traffic study include a left turn lane at Lithopolis and Hayes Roads for westbound traffic on Lithopolis Road. It also includes a right turn lane at the access point on Lithopolis Road between the commercial and the townhome subareas, and a left turn lane there. There were some deficiencies in how lane configurations were put into the model for the traffic study, so we have asked them to look at those at the roundabout in those areas, but there are improvements that will be required. That would be the developer's responsibility to complete those improvements. And then there will also likely be improvements along Oregon Road, because that roadway is not in a condition that would support this amount of traffic and development on it. That roadway, I believe, is 19 feet wide, and it has no shoulders. And so that would need to be brought up to a standard that would be our typical roadway standard, which, for a minimum roadway is 26 feet wide.
Okay, and so for my own clarification and for the commission's clarification, so when we're recommending the zoning map and preliminary development plan to city council, so those types of things would be the current developer, Wilcox Community, the current applicant's responsibility to improve prior to other sub-areas being developed and sold.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be determined, once we get completely through the traffic study. So we've got, essentially the first draft has been submitted. We've reviewed and provided comments back. There'll be technical corrections made to see if that changes any of those recommendations. And then hopefully by the time we get to a council, when council's considering this, we'll have a final approved traffic study.
Okay. What other questions or comments for staff? So we're going to, so for everybody's input, we're going to kind of talk about ZM 24003 and PDP 24001 collectively, and I'll hold one public hearing. But if the applicant's present and wishes to speak to either application or add anything, I believe the commission may have some questions for you all as well.
I will mention there is also a right turn lane at Lithopolis and Oregon Road.
Thank you.
Didn't have that. So basically all three access points along Lithopolis Road would have improvements.
Okay.
I'm writing as fast as I can here. Good evening, members of the commission. My name is David Hodge. I'm with the law firm Underhill and Hodge, and I'm a zoning and land use lawyer here this evening on behalf of Wilcox Communities. I have really spent my entire adult life doing this kind of work. Microphone just came on, I guess. And 2-3 nights every week out talking about new developments and zonings in communities all over greater Columbus. I go back a long ways. Worked with Lucas years and years ago when he was at Reynoldsburg, and so in some ways Lucas and I have grown up together in the regional development business here in greater Columbus. Interestingly, really very interestingly, I also go a little bit of a ways back as it relates to this particular real estate. The owner of this property is a man named Dwight Imler. They just waved at you. Mr. Imler and I got acquainted years ago, I don't know how many now, 4 or 5 anyway, regarding this property here in Canal. And most of you probably know that this was the subject of an application years ago with Westport, D.R. Horton, that came through really the entire process and ultimately was not approved by your city council. Dwight and I have continued to work at this property all those years, and through that have become personal friends and even business partners on some things all over, and just a great guy and an all-around salt-of-the-earth person here in the community, self-made from Circleville. Across that span, I've been in here, never before the Planning Commission, never before your council, but I've been in to meet with your staff and in some cases elected officials about this property, and have been in here with D.R. Horton, Lennar, Pulte, M.I. Homes. Everybody is interested in coming to Canal. This is desirable real estate, and everybody in the marketplace, they want to be right here in your community. They want to be on this piece of property. And so, why hadn't that happened over the last 4, 5, 6 years? With the economy for housing as hot as it's been. Nobody's fault, but the fact of the matter is, Canal sets the bar high. You guys have set the bar very high in terms of your adoption of the residential appearance standards. It causes the single-family production builders to just do cartwheels, and nobody's been able to quite figure it out. And so, in some ways, what we are doing here, especially with the single-family residential sub-area, this is the field of dreams. And that's what I've told Jonathan Wilcox. And I believe it. This is zone it, and they will come. We are setting a very, very high bar with this zoning. And I think it's appropriate for Canal to set a high bar at this stage of the game. This is some real estate that's likely going to spur some adjacent development onto the west and in other locations. I know you have your recent 2023 plan, which cites for some additional residential growth in the community. And so why not, with this application, on the heels of your 2023 comprehensive plan, why not set the bar high and set a new tone for residential development in Canal? I spend a fair amount of time in Canal. Actually, I drove here tonight from Winchester. My son plays on the Bexley High School team, and I was over there watching some golf, and so I run up and down Gender Road all the time. And in my personal opinion, and some may disagree, but when you look at what happened at Winchester, and that developed years and years ago, everybody's a lot smarter now, but you have the rear of those homes turned out to Gender Road. You've got fake 3-board vinyl horse fence with missing rails and probably an HOA that doesn't do what it needs to do to maintain that. And so, I get that. What's being proposed here ain't that. What's being proposed here is classes above what happened there historically over at Winchester. And I think in terms of the presentation that Andrew gave, what we're committing to speaks for itself. Now, all of you have had to spend probably an inordinate amount of time, reading through this book. I'll tell you, as a 23 or so year lawyer, I have spent an inordinate amount of time helping to put this book together, and my part of it was only the text, and that's a good thing. What that means is we didn't write a text, submit it, and everybody said great. We wrote a text, we submitted it. Andrew and Lucas said, "You ain't there, boys." Came to a meeting, Lucas and Andrew still said, "You ain't there, boys." The Planning Commission said, "You ain't there." And so we have repeatedly been asked, sometimes to our chagrin, to literally go back to the drawing board and to make this an acceptable proposal here for the city. And, but for maybe a couple of nuances, I was sitting there, with bated breath and my fingers crossed, hoping that the late supplemental information on the architectural theme was going to be enough to satisfy Lucas and Andrew, and it sounds like possibly we still have a little bit of work to do there, but we have, sincerely and earnestly tried to submit a package that creates a unified development across these various sub-areas. If we could maybe, I think I can project my voice. If I can't, you guys holler at me. I'll come back over to the microphone. But I'd like to walk over.
You can take it with you, so it stays on the record.
Okay. I might have to have somebody be a Vanna White for me here, Chris. We'll see.
I'd be honored.
What page do you want it on, David?
Just the one that shows the overall illustrative site plan the best? Yeah, probably that one. So one thing to note, and we have the full book and we have the development text, and those two things work in conjunction with one another. That book and the site plans and the architecture and all of the booklet, that's not just pretty pictures. The intention is for the development standards text and the preliminary plan to work together as commitments, and they are. And we added a statement to our development text to make that abundantly clear. When you go back and you look at the Canal zoning code and what it calls for, and folks may disagree with this, but in my opinion, what it calls for is a conceptual plan, and it's got 8 or 10 things that are minimum mandatory requirements for submission. Well, in terms of what we've submitted, I think we've gone way above and beyond the minimum requirements for a submission, because we are serious about this and we do want to work through this process and do want to demonstrate our level of commitment to Canal. So it's the text and it's the site plan and it's the other images in there that all work together as a commitment through this zoning process to Canal. Andrew mentioned some uniform standards to unify the neighborhood across all of the sub-areas. And maybe for this one, Andrew, if you don't mind to flip back over, you have an image in there for that. And so we heard that loud and clear from staff and at the last planning commission, and so we worked very hard to come in and demonstrate our commitment to do that. So you see here the red all around the, is that right? Okay, yeah, so the red demonstrates this crossbuck wood horse fence all along the frontage, and it's a wood crossbuck horse fence because we talked with staff about what kind of fence they thought would be preferential, whether it's four-board, standard horse, customary horse, or crossbuck. So we did the crossbuck, which is a little unique, but really elegant to frame the perimeter of the property. We come in along the perimeter of the property and incorporate pedestrian trails. There's another exhibit for that, but we don't need to go look at that. We can maybe switch to that later. We come in along the frontage and create kind of a uniform set of landscaping treatment all along the frontage. We have generous kind of rural preserve setbacks all along all the public roadways along the frontage. At each of the entryways into the development, you'll come in and you'll have signage that's like that with the post arm or the hanging monument. These are various efforts to be decided at the time of final development plan for some additional sort of ornamentation along the entries. We tried, and maybe we didn't go far enough, to commit to making the architecture across all of the sub-areas be not the same, because they're different product, but to be at least complementary. We tried to say with stone we'd have a certain shade, with brick we'd have a certain shade, committing to certain roof pitches, but maybe that's an item for some additional discussion. Andrew went over the public street, private street exhibit, but it's worth noting that with this trail that comes in, we are creating over 10,000 lineal feet of this 8-foot multi-use path. You see it all along the frontage. You see it meander down along Lyle Creek, comes up out of this cul-de-sac, crosses over Lyle Creek twice with pedestrian bridges to really unify the neighborhood, so that if you're, if you are somebody that lives here, you can get out, you can walk your dog all over the neighborhood, you can get out, cross the creek, come out along the road frontage, and really provides a first-rate quality neighborhood and place for folks to live. Speaking of dogs, there's a commitment to do a dog park here within this sub-area. Commitments, as Andrew previously mentioned, to some activation up to the open space that gets created east of the single-family houses with the gazebo and the pond overlook. We have significant tree preservation with the proposal, as Andrew mentioned. Yeah, perfect. That one kind of shows the existing conditions, right? Or is this the tree preservation?
Existing conditions. It's the removal, but all the dots are existing.
Yeah, so you can see we are coming along Lyle Creek, preserving a significant portion of that, preserving the trees along the west perimeter, an effort made to preserve the trees up along Hayes on the north, certainly along the perimeter on the south, as a good transition to the single-family residential that exists down there. So I think that we've, it's a bean field or a corn field. I don't know. Dwight, what do you got in it this year? Beans. How they doing? We've got more right here. We have to home. So it's not, it's not like it's a wooded site, but we are being, I think, more than responsible in terms of creating development around these natural features, both with the trees and with Lyle Creek. The landscape plan shows a significant new landscape plantings, all the circles you see all over this thing. It's going to be really very well landscaped. The landscape architects are here, Todd Ferris and Anna McGeady sitting here in the red shirt. Done really a great job of helping us to envision this site and to come in and landscape, really landscape the heck out of it, which again is a quality of life issue, and people love to live in a neighborhood like this with nature, with mature tree preservation, with all of the trail connectivity. Another important thing is that this development unlocks for Canal some planned growth in your 2023 comprehensive plan. The property that's adjacent to the west, this is the city limit. Our western boundary is the city limit. The property to the west is not presently in Canal, but because it touches Canal, can be annexed into Canal, and that's, we think likely to happen. And this development really fosters that additional growth, which your plan says you want to have happen. Your 2023 comp plan says you want to have happen. It fosters that growth by providing the utilities, the water lines, the sanitary sewer lines, the storm sewer, the road connections over to make that property developable at all. This property is going to have to develop in order for this property to the west to be ready for development. And Lucas, if I ever say anything you disagree with, jump in and correct me. Because I'm not going to pretend to know Canal and Canal Code as well as those guys. We talked a little bit about the traffic impact study, and that traffic impact study, as you heard, is underway. Mr. Donahue, you asked the question about whose responsibility that is. That is not a burden that's going to be stuck on Canal. It's something that the developer undertakes. That traffic impact study has worked with private traffic engineers, with Canal's engineers and Canal's contract engineers. Traffic impact studies concluded. It determines what road improvements are going to be warranted out here to the 3 streets that are adjacent, and then those road improvements will have to be made by the developer of this property. Not something that Canal will be stuck with. Some different open spaces on here. This slide says 35. Somehow or another today I came to the conclusion it was 37.5%. Either way, it's a considerable commitment to the preservation of good open space on this site, preserving the natural features of the site, which is something also that your comprehensive plan talks about. I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'm going to go really fast through this, and then I'm going to shut my mouth, and between me and the team here, we'll do our best to answer questions. Andrew did a great job on the overall presentation. Sub-area A here you see is traditional single-family residential. That is on 52-foot lots. That increased a little bit with some planning commission feedback. That also changed the side yard commitment to 6. I reached out to a friend of mine at MI Homes this afternoon, asked him, he's been following along, everybody's following along, asked him what he thought the price points were going to be for the homes that would eventually go on lots at this level of commitment, and he said they're going to be north of $550,000 easy. So that speaks for itself. The housing that's going to come here on these 52-foot lots are going to be $550,000 at a minimum and up. And that's what makes it tough. It's a starter house these days, and it's weird to say, but a starter house these days by a production builder is around $300,000, $350,000. So this is an elevated product here that's driven because Canal set the bar high and adopted your residential appearance standards and requires a top-notch development to happen here, which is exactly what we are proposing. Sub-area B, these are the Wilcox apartment homes here in the center. Sub-area B and the Wilcox group, they are really the drivers of this development at this point in time. That's my client on this. It's unfortunate that Jonathan Wilcox couldn't be here tonight. He was here last time. Nobody tells the Wilcox story better than Jonathan Wilcox. But a picture is worth 1,000 words, and so you see here exactly what it is that they propose to do. These are single-story apartments. There's no restriction on age, but what you often find is that people are stepping down out of their house, moving to these, renters by choice, people that want to, snowbird and not own. They can live here part of the year, have somebody else maintain their property, live part of the year in Florida. Very successful product all over central Ohio. I know that Lucas and Andrew know it well, have been over to look at other product, as have some of your elected officials. Really a top-notch company, a local company, started by Jonathan's father, and it's now run by Jonathan and his brother. Lots of examples of this product all over town, should anybody have the desire to go take a look at what it is. It's amenitized with a clubhouse here along Oregon Road, amenitized with a dog park, has this open space amenity up to the north, and the folks that live there, if they're older, they can get out of the house with their dog, go to the dog park, again, walk all these trails, and it's just a wonderful place for folks to live. Sub-area C is the townhouses. This in sub-area C and sub-area D, there's a little bit of a backstory there. When we started this development, Mr. Imler does not own that portion of the property. It's another gentleman by the name of Jim Reed, and Jim Reed acquired that property. And as we met with staff and as we contemplated how best to position this zoning, the discussions were, let's do a mixed-use neighborhood, transitioning this from intensity out at the corner, back to townhouses, back to single-story apartments, back to the single-family, on down to the west. And so we actually worked pretty hard to get in front of Mr. Reed to include his property with his consent into the development. Currently allowed to have 2-story townhomes in the text, with the caveat if somebody came in here with some 3-story product and absolutely knocked staff socks off, knocked the planning commission socks off, that that there's that ability through the variance process that this board would approve. This obviously is a PUD. This is not the last time this commission's going to see this product. After this goes to council, if we're fortunate enough to have it approved, you will see it back here with a development plan. Just a couple of features about that. We've intentionally created this sort of central gathering spot area, have kind of a cabana building there. As you're over in sub-area D, the commercial sub-area, you've got that big vista back, that public open space area across the basin and across Lyle Creek. Really sets itself up well for a neighborhood and a neighborhood gathering spot. The last sub-area is sub-area D, and it's a commercial sub-area. The text speaks to what those uses are, but the intention, and hopefully the way it's written now, is that those be really neighborhood-oriented commercial use. What we said in the text is that the only uses permitted there are neighborhood commercial and suburban office, so, small retail, small restaurant, no drive-through, no gas, no convenience, small retail, small restaurant, dentist office, things of that nature that would go there at the corner. We don't know the architecture. We intended to write the text such that there would be some uniform characteristics with that sub-area and the other sub-areas. But that architecture would have to really get honed in, dialed in, and decided at the development plan portion in the later phases of the process. Oh, what have I left out, Chris? Well, we appreciate the opportunity to be here with the development. It really and truly, it's here tonight with a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work through evenings and weekends. Most of that has fallen to me and to Chris and to Anna to get this done and shaped up and in a spot that it's appropriate for Canal. We've been at it several months really working at it before we even filed an application. And, when I heard tonight that I had to get 4 affirmative votes to move on, broke my heart a little bit because I did plan to ask for a vote tonight. But if the staff and if the commission feels that we still have significant work to do, then certainly we're committed to being here, so we'll go back and do that significant work. But I do stand by what I said earlier. If you look at the preliminary development plan requirements in your code and what we've done with the creation of this book and the level of commitment that we are making to Canal, we are making really a first-rate proposal to you. And this is going to be, I think, a great neighborhood for Canal, and it's going to establish a precedent for how things happen onto the property in the west and the other properties. So we would love to move on. We'd love nothing better than to get sent on to your council with a positive recommendation. We're not so naive to think we're going to get a rubber stamp at your council. They're going to put us through the ringer too and have lots of questions of their own, but we're certainly here with a team assembled, and we'll do our best to answer any questions that anybody on the commission has.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Appreciate it. Questions for the applicant?
The only thing that I would like to add, again, as Mr. Hodge said, the applicant has gone through and looked at kind of what we've talked about in previous discussions. Both staff and Planning and Zoning Commission have put together their proposal, including some of the last minute clarifications and updates. So please provide them with feedback on those items. If there's any things you would like to see amongst each other, you can talk about that. But again, as the applicant noted, without that discussion is what's key here this evening on if they need to go back and look at additional items or receive whatever recommendation based on what's being proposed. So that's what I encourage this evening.
Yeah, so my comment would be, being part of this commission for the last 10 years and seeing this project as it came through with Westport, I don't know when that was, but 2018 or 19. And, the change in market conditions and the progress that's been made here just over the last 60 days in terms of what we requested, and you guys have come back, I think, fairly close to, some of the things that we recommended. And then I also think that this is again, my take on the development text, the architecture in terms of, the thematic architectural elements that we talk about in our code, and, the things that were before us this evening, and I haven't had a chance to digest all this, but I'm trying to check these off and read through these and make notes as Mr. Hodge was giving his presentation. So thank you for that. I appreciate the thoroughness and being prepared. I would also just ask, and maybe I'm missing it, so I apologize if so. So what is in the development text, and maybe Mr. Moore, this is for you, the front porch element and the setbacks, is that defined in this somewhere?
So the applicant is noting in the development text, let me get what exact page it's on for you. So if you go to page 6 of the Miller Farm development text, the deviation number number B, they are noting that they're going to meet the requirement for the minimum 7-foot depth to the porch, but they are asking in that deviation that the garage, instead of being located 4 feet behind, say, a living room, a bedroom, whatever is a livable area of the home in front, they're asking for that garage to be flush with the livable area, and the porch will extend out beyond that. They have noted that porch will be a minimum of 4 feet in front of the home, but will be a minimum of 7 foot deep in total. So, if you take a look at some of these examples here, these are all showing the porch that wraps completely in front. But if, say, this home here, if this was the only area, say, that was under a porch and these columns were like right up against the siding, this area right here would be a minimum of 7 foot deep and 10 foot wide, while it would at least have to stick out 4 feet in front of the front livable area. So it's committing to the porch will be the most frontward element by at least 4 feet.
By 4 feet, okay.
May I add one thing, Mr. Donahue?
Absolutely.
And it is not, these are the elevations from the original submission, so these didn't get updated when we updated the text language, but we also went back in with a little encouragement from your staff to commit to glass inserts on those garage doors. So when you look at those elevations, imagine there's going to be a little bit of additional sort of architectural ornamentation along that, with also some hardware along with that. So it's going to dress up those facades even more than that.
And that's true across all areas?
Yes.
To the ranch homes as well?
Did we, across all
Yeah,
areas?
it's notated in the,
In the addition, the things you gave us tonight, I think.
Yeah, and if you'll recall, that's the same requirement we kind of put on Canal Cove. So all those garage doors are required to have glass. The porch is required to stick out in front of the garage.
And this is a question for staff, so the PUD text, let's say we're looking down the road, is adopted and Westport decides, Wilcox decides not to move forward. Does that follow the land, or would that need to be?
Our PUD requirements allow for a 5-year period.
Okay.
And so there would be 5 years to develop under this text and preliminary plan. If nothing is developed, if the first phase is not developed, then the plan would expire. They would be required to come back through the process again. So this, I believe in 2014, a portion of this property was rezoned to a planned district. That text expired in 2019, or not 20, I'm sorry, it expired in 2014. It was done in 2009.
Okay.
So it's expired, so that's why we're going back through this process again with the addition of additional property as well.
So if the text is adopted and sub-area, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting which area is getting developed first, I believe it's B?
B.
Sub-area B gets developed and 5 years goes by and, nothing else happens, so then we would have to rewrite the text and adopt it at that time?
No. So
Okay.
as long as one sub-area,
Is
one
dev-
phase and one sub-area gets started, it locks the
Okay.
plan in.
Okay.
So this zoning exercise, when Wilcox goes forward, locks this zoning at this heightened standard in for all of it.
Okay, thank you. What other questions or comments for the applicant or staff?
I would say in addition to the porches, we talked about the buildings facing Oregon Road. Those will be designed to, address the street with a porch or a prominent entryway. The commitment on, Wilcox's development would be similar to the units you see in the picture to the left there. So four-sided architecture, making sure that those address the street. And then on the townhomes, it's very similar to the examples given here. So this shows a porch, roof overhangs, all those things. And those are designed to be rear-loaded designs. So the bottom photo would be the rear of those units. It wouldn't face outward the development or outward to the commercial areas. So the buildings are oriented to, as Mr. Deans mentioned at the last meeting that they appeared, he noted a New Albany development where kind of all those units have porches and face out onto the commercial development there in downtown New Albany. So it's kind of mixing those uses. So that was the attempt here by shifting those driveways so that it's a shared common entryway between the commercial and the townhome piece, and then orienting those buildings so that they're facing out onto the commercial. They're also facing that central greenway. And so there was a detention pond that was in the center of the entire development. And what we'd ask is that be converted into kind of a public gathering place for the entire neighborhood. So you've got the 10,000 feet of paths that allow you to access from anywhere. So it's a very connected community in terms of you can walk to, this central greenway. You can visit the commercial developments. We see a lot of this in some of our neighborhoods now where, they'll have a night where there's a food truck that comes and, this kind of gives that an area where the neighborhood can gather and kind of, be in one common area in that central green space.
Mr. Moore, could you go back to the street, the private and public? So I have my one last question regarding, because I always get hung up on the traffic studies and the overall architecture. So the red is public and the blue is private. How does the city interact with that type of structure in this type of planned unit district? And do we have somewhere like this within the city currently?
Yeah, so if you, the biggest kind of differences between them is we have standard right-of-way and roadway cross-sections. That's what the applicant is showing here for the public. That sets a standard of where your property boundary starts and stops. For private, your property boundary would be right up, probably to the roadway or the edge of the sidewalk, however. But no, they're multiple families, so it'd be all one contiguous property. Maintenance would be handled by that development type, not the city. And then some of the other factors behind it is these residential units have public roadways because they will connect to other future residential sub-areas. The private areas really don't leave their private site plan to expand to other future sub-areas aside from this commercial zone that's sharing access with sub-area C. So mainly it comes down to roadway design could be tweaked to be a little different.
It would allow maybe center drainage in the street. We have this that frequently exists in Westchester.
I was gonna say, so this is similar to what you see off of Dietz and Thrush.
Correct. The condominiums that are there, those are private streets, the standard, they maybe have a sidewalk that's integrated into the roadway, so it's just a little wider roadway with maybe the sidewalk painted in the road.
Turning stone.
Central stormwater in the middle of the street rather than at the side with curbs. So it's just a different standard of roadway, but it exists frequently throughout our community and condominium communities.
Charleston Lakes, yeah.
Okay.
Now, that also applies to snow removal and maintenance.
Correct.
And they have committed to having individual trash removal, so that would be, each unit would have their own trash containers and be collected at the street. So there's no central dumpsters in any of these site plans. You know, that would change for the commercial, but the commercial would meet our commercial development standards. That requires 80% natural materials, so it'd be similar to what you see kind of along the Gender Road corridor there. You know, brick, it could be cement board siding, that if we wanted to have kind of the same theme that we have with kind of the lap siding that's included on some of these, we could do cement board siding. That is considered a natural material under our code, but, you know, the parking lots will be oriented to the rear and to the sides of the buildings, not to the front of the buildings. Window glass facing the street, so similar design standards that we have in most of our commercial areas now.
Okay, thank you. So one last question. What's the consistency, because I'm not seeing it in the proposed text in terms of, and I know we can talk about this in a final development phase, but it appears right now we're leaving it kind of open-ended on the materials that would be used on each elevation of each sub-area building. Is that accurate? Am I reading that accurately?
Yes.
Yeah, so the updated architectural standards in G that I printed up for you this evening, again, they're noting that if there is masonry, that it'll all be a similar shade, that all buildings shall have similar exterior color finishes, so that'd be within all 4 sub-areas. Muted earth tones, natural tones, no bright or pastel colors, again, that would be within sub-area A, B, C, and D. Section number 3 is noting all residential buildings will be traditional massing. 4 is saying with all residential sub-areas, there'll be pitched roofs with a minimum of 412, max of 812. Number 5 is all residential sub-areas will have either dimensional asphalt shingles or standing seam metal. Number 6 is saying that within each sub-area, there will be at least 2 different exterior materials, either masonry, brick, lap siding, horizontal siding, board and batten shake. Again, that's what Lucas was noting too, that
Okay.
even in the commercial sub-area, there'll be at least 2 different materials to match. Number 7 provides a minimum thickness to any vinyl siding. 8 is saying eaves and overhangs are required. That'd be a minimum of 8 inches wide. That probably should say residential sub-areas. David, just a note. Number 9 is saying gutters and downspouts are required within all residential sub-areas. And then number 10 is all garage doors will have glass panels. So they're starting to provide some of those thematic elements, but some of them are, like you said, Mr. Johnny, you deferred to what that actual shape and style looks like at the final development plan.
Yeah, so my question was, and so I think you answered my question, so number 6, I missed that. So there will be some sort of incorporation of 2 different types of exterior materials, say on the front elevation of all sub-areas, the way this text is written. So some sort of masonry or brick and then siding and those sorts of things.
Or it could be 2 different styles of siding. So it says lap siding, horizontal board and batten, or shake siding. So you could have maybe the gable end as a shake, and then you have a lap siding on the bottom floor. So, you know, it also allows that.
Okay. Is there any feedback from the commission on that?
And then they are gonna meet our requirements, you know, in our residential appearance standards. We have certain standards. If you're gonna use vinyl siding, you have an upgraded standard. You require a certain amount of window trim. You require, you know, a finish like freeze bands, things like that to be included. Corner boards that are, you know, an upgraded version of a vinyl siding.
It's made so painful. The residential appearance standards make the incorporation of vinyl siding so painful that nobody's going to do that. Most people are going to opt to do natural materials, you know, including hardy plank. Thank you.
Okay.
Hardy plank's considered natural, right, guys?
It is.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant or comments?
Could I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
would you flip over to the architectural page? All right, so
I found a laser pointer if you want it.
okay.
It's that green button right there.
All right, now we're in business. So flip over to the Wilcox architecture. So if I'm understanding correctly, and I often don't understand everything correctly, the issue is that we're not saying, that we're not choosing two brick colors tonight, or two family of colors for the stone. The reason that we are reluctant to do that now, I mean, look, if this is what Wilcox wants to do. They have some other color schemes and some other architectural styles. I think the reason we went with this one is that your staff said it was their preference of among the various types of product that Wilcox does. And so it's hard for us to say tonight that that's going to be the color in all of the sub-areas, not just the Wilcox sub-area, when we don't know if we leave here and go to your elected officials, they say, we like your other style better.
Yeah, and I'll say, this development is independent of the rest of the city, so to speak, in terms of its location. So I think the consistency that's laid out in most of this text, I understand, the aesthetics and things like that could change through the final development process. I just want to, if we recommend this to council for adoption, I want the development text to be consistent in terms of each sub-area. And I think we're close.
And I'm telling you, that's hopefully what it says. This first section, this section G, that is if you look at the kind of the preamble to that section, as a further unifying characteristic, thematic design requirements shall be incorporated in all sub-areas. And then the following elements shall be required. So those 10 things are commitments across all of the residential sub-areas.
That was kind of my question to Mr. Moore at the beginning, is I think we're very close with what they provided here in G tonight, or today, I guess, earlier.
And that has been incorporated in, it's not just a handout, it's been incorporated into the text and submitted to staff. And so, as I said, look, I know we've got a tough road ahead of us with your elected officials, and nothing we'd like better than to take a positive recommendation from this group on to council, with the understanding that this is going to continue to be shaped through that process and continue to, have some T crossing and some I dotting as we come back to you on the various sub-areas for that development plan portion of the process.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Hodge, you spoke to both applications, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So the last time this, and maybe I should ask before you leave the podium, would you like a vote this evening from this commission?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So there was not a public hearing held during the last hearings of these applications. We decided to table those. So the applicant is asking for a vote this evening. So we have collectively talked about both applications this evening. So I'm going to open up the public hearing for the zoning map amendment change that's on the floor before us this evening. But feel free to speak about the preliminary development plan or the zoning map, either application. So if any member of the public wishes to speak, you can come to the podium. Time limit's 3 minutes. I won't start the timer until you start talking, and I'll kindly interrupt you with 30 seconds left. But if there's anything anybody wishes to speak, now is your time. And please, when you come to the podium, just sign in, and Once that's done, state your name and your address and please speak. What's on your mind?
My name's Adam Karshner. I'm a resident at 115 Pfeiffer Drive. We don't need any more multifamily units in Canal, Winchester. I've never heard anyone in this city get excited about more apartments other than developers and tax collectors. I'll be pushing for new legislation with council to limit the ratio of multifamily units per acre to what it is currently. The city's ability to provide infrastructure, services, and maintain the community's quality of life will be impacted by more high-density housing. Just speaking in terms of traffic, we do not need what this development offers. Not to mention how it will impact the schools, which I have not heard one mention of during this meeting. I guess the schools have to figure it out on their own. To the property owner, fully respect your right to sell or develop your land, but it doesn't need to be packed to the gills. If you want to fill it with single-family homes in a small commercial area, that'd be awesome. Now's the time for this city to focus on its long-term future, not short-term impact on coffers. We do not need max profit projects in this city. We need to figure out how to keep the rural feel of our community where we can. Your decisions on new housing development will impact the city potentially in perpetuity. 30 years from now, I want to live in Canal, Winchester, not something resembling Whitehall or Reynoldsburg. And I would prefer to stay here and not have to move to Carroll or beyond. The biggest problem with this project is if you zone it, they will come. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Would it be possible for me to respond to that?
Not at this time. Motion was made by Mr. Paulsgrove,
Second.
second by Ms. Gooden. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wildenthaler.
Yes.
Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Ms. Gooden, yes. Mr. Paulsgrove.
Yes.
Okay. So the applicant would like a vote this evening, and again, you'll need 4 positive votes for the motion to carry on both applications. So I'll need a motion on ZM 24003.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt ZM 24003. Or approve, I guess would be the.
That would be a recommendation to council for
Yeah,
approval.
we recommend to council to approve ZM 24-003.
I'm sorry, recommend what?
Recommend to council that we approve ZM 24-003.
Need a second.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Gooden, second by Mr. Paulsgrove. Any further discussion on the motion? I would say we are voting this evening on the appropriateness of the zoning map amendment change based on the text and the discussion we've had this evening and in our July meeting. And then the next preliminary development plan will also be voted upon, and we'll open a public hearing for that. But this is based purely on the appropriate use of the land based on the development text and the things we've discussed. So if there's no further discussion, Ms. Gooden, roll call, please.
Mr. Wildenthaler.
No.
Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Ms. Gooden, yes. Mr. Paulsgrove.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion does not carry.
I'm just not 100%, I don't know. I'm just not 100% on it yet, although it is very appealing. Perhaps there are changes that I don't see that we should reconsider and let council make the decision. I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Wildenthaler, would you like to recommend tabling with the additional comment at the end?
It's already voted. It's done.
Okay.
The vote's good. All right, so with that, do we need to still vote on PDP 24001, or should we recommend that for tabling?
Should be tabled.
I believe the motion would be to table.
It's a moot point at this point.
Chairman Donahue, could I say?
Please.
I think we still need to vote on it because you've just made a recommendation to council and it's ultimately council's decision. So
Yeah, okay.
we still need to take action on the preliminary development plan.
Okay, so we'll move on to PDP 24001.
Yeah, if I might, our preference is to go to council with a positive recommendation from this commission. And obviously, that didn't just happen. So I'm wondering, I guess I would ask the commission if it would be willing to reconsider its vote of disapproval, and then make a motion that we table for a month to allow us to come back and address the outstanding issues and hopefully get a majority of the commission's support.
So, Mr. Moore, Mr. Harrell, I'll defer to you, since we don't have the solicitor here on the procedure to follow.
It sounded like the applicant was asking to table PDP 24001.
I think we need to,
No, I'm asking to reconsider ZM 24003, a motion to reconsider ZM 24003. That motion would have to carry to reconsider, and then a motion to table.
So,
Can the applicant withdraw?
sir, thank you. The appeal process to city council is similar in this situation, is that?
This would not be an appeal because it's a recommendation to city council. We're looking to see, pull up the P&Z rules. Give us just a moment, we'll see what the P&Z rules say. Adopted. 9, there you go.
So,
yeah, so it appears that the applicant can make a request to reconsider a denied application. That shall be filed with the planning and zoning administrator within 10 days of the original denial. Evidence in support of the application shall initially be limited to that necessary to enable the planning and zoning commission to determine whether there's been a substantial change in the facts, evidence, or conditions in the case that were not originally presented.
So that would be an action that takes place after this
Would take
evening,
place after.
since
after
the applicant
vote.
asked for the vote.
And then that would be up to the commission to determine at the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay.
A reconsideration requires a member on the prevailing side to make a motion approved in accordance with the rules above, so Mr. Wildenthaler would need to make that motion, so.
In the next
Correct.
regular scheduled meeting. Okay. That's the way I understood it. All right, so PDB 24-001. A recommendation to vote or to table? So under those circumstances, I would propose that we vote on PDP 24-001 based on our discussion this evening. But I will need a motion from a commission a motion put on the floor for voting or tabling.
Mr. Donahue, are you going to ask for a public hearing on that as well?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So there is a public hearing on this, so if there's anybody that didn't speak that wishes to speak, I'll open it up for public comment. Okay, we need a motion to close the public comment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Wildenthaler?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Gooden, yes. Mr. Paulsgrove?
Yes.
Yes. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay. Need a motion.
I guess I'm not sure whether motion to table or motion to vote is better at this point, or which makes more sense.
The applicant has asked that they would potentially ask for reconsideration based on changing of facts and conditions, so they could do the same in a negative vote in this scenario, or you could table.
What you need is for me to reconsider and go ahead and vote yes, so we can send it on to council, and then we'll worry about the other one.
The other one has to come, they have to come together.
That would come at a later date, Mr. Wildenthaler.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The reconsideration would come at the next planning and zoning meeting, not tonight, based on the way our planning and zoning
Okay.
rules are written.
Then I make a motion that we recommend approval of PDP 24-001.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Gooden, second by Mr. Paulsgrove. Any further discussion?
Skip me. Jump to him.
And the roll call?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Roll call.
Mr. Wildenthaler? Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Gooden, yes. Mr. Paulsgrove?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries. And we will work with staff and the applicant on reconsideration for ZM 24003 before next month's regularly scheduled meeting. Any order new business?
For old new business, those of you who've been watching, the Ohio Health Project has gone vertical. They are moving right along. The project for the Columbus Metropolitan Library has also been fully issued, so they are starting the construction on that side as well. Staff has been talking with a number of folks around town about different residential variance requests, but nothing has been filed at this time. So stay tuned, and we may have some of those in the next several meetings coming up. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to report.
Anything new on the taco site? I forget the name of the company. Del Taco?
They are no longer in contract to purchase that property.
So it's up for sale again?
Correct. And then the rezoning for Bowen Road, the 23 acres from R3 to LM, that was approved by council last Monday evening. So we're in a 30-day period, which would allow, referendum before that zoning goes into effect.
Has there been any further discussion on the Home Depot and also BP? I know we talked about that they took the car wash down, they're not moving forward. Is that still?
Yeah, BP has no plans to do anything on that site. For Home Depot, the conversations I have with their attorney are few and far between. The last Zoom call we had is they wanted to take up, I believe, 30-some parking spaces in the front of the lot to store lumber and other material, and designate that as an approved outdoor storage location rather than behind the building. My feedback was that was not appropriate and encouraged them to flop their seasonal sale location to make that fenced-in product storage, and then have their seasonal storage out in the parking lot in a secured manner, similar to like what Walmart's and Myers do. He was going to take that back to Home Depot. That was probably been about a month ago for their consideration. But I've probably only had 3 or 4 conversations with him since he came before you guys in February.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Any movement on the Taylor property at all?
No. They cut the grass.
I did miss that. Thank you. That was awesome. I need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Wildenthaler?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Gooden, yes. Mr. Paulsgrove?
Yes.
Timeout 8:32 PM.